Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 19th Pittsburgh Public Schools Board of Directors Agenda Review. We'll begin this evening with the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit, and I'd like you to just address any questions you have in their packet. And I can't remember where I started last month. Dr. Allen, we'll start with you tonight.
Hi. I just have a question for number one, in terms of how we classify these. Where the contractors are listed on the back, are all of them minority since the box is checked minority?
They're female. They're all okay.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Brentley.
Similar question along those same lines. Do you put any kind of annual report out at all? Or monthly report? Minority, African American, small business, et cetera?
We have not, and we are so small
Okay.
that we don't. This is one of the first times we are doing this.
Okay.
This is
Well,
first.
it's helpful to see here, and it would be really helpful if we're able to see that as well so that we can also be able to advocate for those smaller businesses and women-owned businesses, minority-owned business. We know women are doing very well, but being able to see the numbers with minorities would be very, very helpful. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. McCray?
I'm good.
Ms. Shealy? Mr. Sumter?
No comments or questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the Agenda Review Committee. The first part are proposals and grants number 1 through 3 on the green. Dr. Allen, we'll start with you.
I don't have any questions, just a comment about number 3, that's pretty cool. And I was wondering if this was a pilot. Regarding iPads for students with exceptionalities.
Jane Conley, Executive Director of Special Ed. No, it isn't a pilot. It's a grant that our speech therapists applied for. And if they get them, we're hoping to use them, as the board tab says, with students and to present them with communication opportunities. And there's a number of apps that they can use. So it'll be really interesting. And then we can proceed with more, hopefully.
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Brett.
Yes, can we give the props to that person who submitted it?
Sorry.
Can we give some recognition to the employee who put the application? You can come to the microphone, give her credit. That's a wonderful thing.
It was Kelly Pabst, who is our supervisor for speech, language, and hearing.
Beautiful. And I think why it's important to acknowledge that is that while districts around us may have other issues with Pittsburgh, but we're known for how we are running and doing well with our special ed, so it's important to acknowledge that. So we say thank you to her as well. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. McCray.
I just want to take note of the first one here that we're expanding our advanced placement program. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Shealy.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. I agree with Mr. McCray that expansion of AP and IB are wonderful. And I have questions specifically on that item, though. I can't understand from the tab, whether every year is funded or only the first year, and each year you have to reapply. It lists as a 3-year grant, but I can't tell whether it's all funded.
Kate Reed, Executive Director, Student Services. Yes, we've been awarded the grant for all 3 years, but in the first year it may be increased in the amount depending on funding.
And as the tab reads, you would not need, because of that you put an up to amount in the tab, you would not need to come back to us for authorization to accept the additional amount. Okay, so let's talk about the schools. And being the homer that I am, I can notice that a lot of kids that live in my district are not represented in these schools. A lot are represented at Westinghouse, But as far as early IB programs, or I mean, early AP preparedness programs, a lot of my district attends Starrett and Colfax, and those would be a high percentage of my, particularly at Colfax, the students that are in my district tend to be minorities. How did you select these schools, and why not other ones?
There were some criteria around selecting schools. Allison McCarthy, who unfortunately was not able to be here this evening, has a lot of the specifics. I can get those for you for next week.
Please do, because as I mentioned, Starrett and Colfax aren't in there, and those are a lot of the minority kids from Point Breeze and Homewood would attend those two schools, and East Hills. And my understanding is that expansion of this AP program is to bring more low-income and I think minority students into
Correct.
AP and IB.
Yes.
And so that's a pretty sizable population from my little counting of kids who aren't included. And then the other thing that I don't understand from this, and I think Ms. Reed, you and I had a conversation about this, is how does this affect the expansion of IB? Um, I, I, I can see how it expands AP, but what are you going to do with regard to expanding IB in this work?
So there are several things that will be happening in this grant. One in particular that stands out for IB is that this past summer we had a summer academy for those students going into AP classes to better ramp them up to go into AP. We were not able to do the same for IB because of the size. However, this grant will allow us to run similar type programs as we did for AP this past year, both in the spring and in the summer for students entering diploma classes.
It doesn't increase the access to IB because those will have to be students who are already enrolled at Obama.
It will increase what we believe is will increase access to being able to do well on a lot of the diploma exams and as well as in the classes. In terms of increasing enrollment, that would be as we continue to try to grow the program and have more students enrolled there, which is not necessarily a financial cost as much as it is enrolling students through the Magna program.
Okay, I guess I think I'm going to leave this alone for now, but it's just the 4 points that you're recognized specifically talk about AP courses, and it doesn't specify in the paragraph of the tab that IB, how it affects IB.
So it is the API grant, which is Advanced Placement Incentive, but we explained in our grant application that we also had a very large IB program within the district and we were able to include them because it was also college level courses.
My last one, and I think, and historically we have given aid to students to take AP exams, financial aid. Do we do the same for IB?
We will check into
I'd
that.
have to check on that. That's an annual tab that comes through. I don't know if Dr. Otua knows off the top of her head if we pay for the IB exams like we do AP.
As you're looking, could you look at the cost of the two exams, AP versus, I don't know if, I know there's a significant difference,
Yes.
but is AP, so with that, is the cost the same for AP exams regardless of the course? Or like would physics cost different?
I believe they're the same, but we will confirm that for you.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
I think we're fairly sure we do not pay for the cost of the IB exams, so.
So I might think about considering equity in that. I don't know how you make that equitable without spending more money, but it just seems that if we're trying to really increase low-income children's ability to thrive on an IB exam, a huge barrier for them is cost when it comes to taking those exams and actually getting the credit from them. So I just would encourage thought around how to equalize the opportunities for IB students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. Just for clarification purposes, it's sort of a repeat of what's been asked already. This is again on number one, the authorization requested to receive $1,214,717 from the U.S. Department of Education for the Advanced Placement Incentive Grant Award, and it talked about limited funding for the first year, and we may receive the additional funding is there any guarantee, is there a guarantee that we'll receive the full grant amount at some point in time?
My understanding is that we have been awarded the full amount over the next 3 years, but I will get 100% confirmation on that today.
Okay, just when it talks about if funds are available to receive the additional amounts in year one, what would happen if funds weren't available?
We received 334. If additional funds become available, then we will get up to 422,000, which is about an $80,000 increase for the first year.
I know that's what it says. It says if. And I'm asking, what if not?
Then we'll only receive 334,000.
Okay, but will we receive the additional year of funding also?
I don't think this really is implying that we wouldn't receive the additional year of funding. What it's saying is the amount that we're currently awarded is 334, even though we ask for more money, basically, due to limited funds. That's what that means. And then if there is additional money available, then we could get additional funding. It doesn't mean that, I don't think it's set to imply that we wouldn't get year two because of the limited funding.
So all I was doing was just asking for the clarification. But the 334 times 3 isn't the 1.2 million. Would the year funding would change each year?
Yeah, it's on the back of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, that's enough on that one. Quick question on item 2, which is the authorization for the early childhood program to accept $4,362.85 for to enhance play space at Pittsburgh Arsenal, and it says to increase indoor and outdoor physical activities. These funds will support a Head Start Body Start Play Space grant at Pittsburgh Arsenal. So from that, I'm assuming that they've already received a grant. This is another grant. And do any other schools receive this money, or is Arsenal the only one? And why just Arsenal?
Carol Bro-Martin's going to come and talk to us about the additional grants.
Carol Barone-Martin, Executive Director for Early Childhood Education. There were pretty specific guidelines on what we could use to apply for the grant. It had to be a place that had nothing, basically, as far as play equipment outside. We applied for a number of programs, and at a previous legislative meeting, you approved 2 others. One was for Westinghouse, and the other one was for Weil. And this one just came, this one was not at first approved by Head Start Body Start. We just received an email about 2 weeks ago that told us that I guess they found additional money, and they also approved Arsenal.
Okay, but the last sentence says these funds will support the Head Start Body Start Play Space grant at Pittsburgh Arsenal. It implies they've already received a grant, or is it 2 grants at Arsenal, or just one?
No, it's just one. I'm sorry
Okay,
about the word.
that's it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, while we're in the green, let's stay here. And I just wanted to go back to my issue with the middle school selected for APIB. The tab reads that the middle schools were selected based on their feeder pattern, and so the 2 schools that I mentioned, Starrett and Colfax, feed a large number of students into Alderdice, and in that none of the Alderdice feeder schools are listed as being eligible or being in this program. So I guess my concern are the Alderdice feeder schools in general, particularly with Alderdice having a very high-level AP program and low-level minority access of that program. It might be a target area.
Okay, and I don't know what the regulations are in regard to this particular grant, and I certainly understand your concern, but I don't know if there's any potential to go back and change schools that we applied for. So, but we hear your concern about Alderdice and feeder schools.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I just have one question on that same tab. Since we only have AP in the high school level, what does this look like in the middle school?
it can look a variety of different ways. This grant is really targeting working with middle schools, again, as Ms. Shelley pointed out, feeding into high schools that want to give, oftentimes you'll hear it referred to as pre-AP curriculum. So having students become familiar with the sorts of skills they'll need to succeed in college level courses when they get to high school. And that can look a lot of different ways. That can be offering advanced classes in the middle school. It can look like outside of school tutoring opportunities or a variety of different things. I'm happy to pull the specific language from the grant if you'd like to see some of the strategies that we outlined.
I was just curious, does this put us in another realm of curriculum development because now we've made a commitment to this, now we have to change the curriculum to match because we already received this. I mean, that whole.
No, what we would do is that there's opportunities within the existing curriculum to embed this work for pre-AP. The second option that Kate offered was, after-school programs. They did a great summer program that we could look into as well for advancing our middle school students, or middle grade students, I should say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to consultants and contracted services. It's number 4 through 16B. On the pink pages, Dr. Allen.
Thank you. I did neglect my note for the green section, a tab that everyone's talking about, and I just want to point out for the viewing audience that there was an article on this in the paper, I think on Monday, in case people want to read more about it. And I do think it's a good strategy, proactive strategy to be targeting middle schools, although Ms. Shealy's point is so noted about the feeder pattern of Allderdice. For the pink, we have, lots of great resources and community partners that complement programming and what's provided, to our schools from 5 through 9 in particular. I wanted to comment on number 5, Richard Carrington. I think I've mentioned this. I mentioned this last year as well. I mean, for some of the services that we get. These really are a bargain for, I think, the value and return on investment that we receive. Also note in here, Hip Hop on Lock at Pittsburgh. Dilworth had personal experience with them as well, and how they're able to really enhance mathematical skills, through something that is very interesting and engaging for students from elementary all the way up to adults. Grow Pittsburgh, the Edible Schoolyard. When I walk my son to Dilworth every morning, they are always drawn to what's growing, in Edible Schoolyard and learning about it, as a part of their classrooms. Just a great program. Center of Life, as well with what they're providing at Pittsburgh Fulton with the with Crunk, creating realistic urban new school knowledge. So there are just wonderful community partners that I think that we just have to continue to acknowledge and thank. And I just wish there was a way that these services could be in more of our classrooms in schools. For numbers 12 through 15, and these are services related to implementation of the Title I School Improvement Grant, requiring the provision of social, emotional, and behavioral support services. And I just had a question for some of the providers. There are different providers that are to offer services to the same schools, and so I'm assuming that they're offering that there are enough students that we need multiple providers to provide these services, and I just wanted to confirm if my assumption is correct.
Jan Ripperts, Chief of Student Services. Yes, you are correct. The majority of the providers have been working in the schools previously, so it's just a continuation of their services, and they've been very productive there with the students.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Brentley.
Yes, number 5, I also just wanted to just mention about the services for Richard Carrington. Always happy to see his name, but I'm not proud that we're getting them at that rate. For what this man is able to do in terms of troubleshooting, understanding, learning, knowing the language of the so-called gang community and the preventive stuff that he offers to this community. I am not proud of that, especially in light of what I've seen other consultants come through here and not make half of a contribution that this man is making on such a serious issue. So I want to mention that we need to find a way to get his services over to the Westinghouse because there are major issues there. We need someone who can interpret, and we need someone who can also come back and feed to the community. So I am not sure who submitted this, but Dr. Lane, there's a will, there's a way, there's money. You need to find a way to get Richard and others, because there are quite a few, Khalid, Rahim, all of these guys have dedicated most of their adult lives to working with the young folks, and what I'm hearing in the Westinghouse is not a good thing. We don't want to hear that, but it is not good. And so we need to find a way to get them in there yesterday, interpret and make some recommendations to us in terms of the students. And then we also need to get a serious evaluation of what's going on there on other levels as well. Number 7, the hip hop is Dr. Rudiak. Is she here? Where is she? Oh, hey, I have my opinion about hip hop, but it works, so I'll just leave it alone. It's a different level, I guess. But I just wanted to know, Doctor, are you familiar with the family? It's a group of boys that were former Pittsburgh Public School students, and I believe they call themselves the Underlords. And they have what's called, actually, I read on the internet, I mean, these guys are getting ready to go national, and we have yet to have a conversation or bring them into the district. They have what's called the Honor Roll Tour, where kids who make honor roll, they set it up in schools and come and provide a concert with the positive rap and the whole bit, and it's growing. And I just want to ask you that if I get you information on it, would you have a conversation with them, especially as former Pittsburgh Public School students? And they're really together. I mean, father is active, he's out in the community. Mother's a former Pittsburgh Public Schools teacher. And so, it would be a wonderful thing if we could enter into some kind of agreement, at least talk to them and see if we can find a way to have it in the district. And that is pretty much it. I just wanted to point out this prevention thing, the victims that we're having at Westinghouse and Perry. Somebody explain that to me. Is it something we normally do, or is it because problems, or are we anticipating problems? I read it. Okay, yeah, I read it where it was.
We've worked with Jan Ripper, Chief of Student Services. We've worked with the Centers for Victims of Violence and Crime for many, many years, and they have been working in Perry and also at Westinghouse for years, and again, have a great track record, and we're pleased that they're working with us again this year.
Okay. Why are we just focusing on those 2 schools?
This is part of the SIG grant, the School Improvement Grant, and again, we're paying for their services in these schools. However, they're working in some of our other schools and not charging us for it. So for these schools, this is where we're consulting with them.
Now,
contracting with them.
Is this different from the services that Jan Ripper used to, Jan Uhas used to offer? Yeah, because I used her quite a bit after there were several shootings in the community, and I referred them to her, and very helpful.
If you look at the bottom of the tab, Janet, she still coordinates all this.
So, but is this separate from those services she offered, or this is a part of?
A part of.
Okay. So if an incident were to happen at another high school, and a parent, which is what I do, I tell them to call Jan, and she can still get access to those services without taking anything.
Absolutely.
Taking them. And then secondly, the group, the Center for Victims of Violence and Crime, they are a diverse group.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Fink?
On item number 10 in the pink, it doesn't say it in here, but in the overview that is included in the white sheets, it says that services will be used up to 30 minutes a month. When you look at how many schools are involved here, one incident in one school could use up that 30 minutes very quickly. And I'm wondering why we have, I mean, is it a financial thing that we've limited it to 30 minutes? I mean, that doesn't seem realistic considering what could happen.
This board tab follows on a previous tab that you approved last month that Beechwood submitted. And Beechwood was going out on their own using this service. And Dr. Rudiak, some of her schools said, we're going to follow Beechwood's model because we really appreciate this kind of on the spot. Parent walks in, need a couple minutes of translation. And so what we did centrally through our ESL department is fold all schools in under this because DT interpreting actually gives the district a great rate because of the partnership that Sally Refugiato has had with them over the years. So now Sally's school is folded in here as well as all of the other ESL sites. What the language in the narrative would imply is that each school would have up to 30 minutes a month, and that's just based on the historical work with Beechwood, how much they use. Now, if we exceed that, we'd come back to the board, but we think that this is a pretty good up to amount to cover the schools based on Sally's partnership with them for several years.
Okay, because it doesn't say in here that it would be each school. It just says services will be used up to 30 minutes a month. And I'm thinking 30 minutes for all that gives everybody 5 minutes, you know. But yeah, if that's 30 minutes per school, then
I think what happened is we looked at this at the superintendent's agenda review and we pulled it. And we made the revision to include all of the ESL sites, and I have a feeling that we didn't go back and update that narrative to list all. If you read the pink pages, it lists all of the schools. So I just think it was our error not updating that front narrative for you. So sorry about that.
okay, I think it's a great idea. I just want to make sure that we have it set large enough that it could accommodate all the schools, and then if there was an issue in any one of them, that they weren't limited time-wise to, you know, how do you call half the parents, you know?
It's my understanding there's another service that's used for typical translation services. This is kind of for an emergency, and it isn't used, like Sally has not used it a lot at Beechwood. Ms. Refugiato, I'm sorry, has not used it a lot at Beechwood, but it's been invaluable when it's needed. It's like right now I need somebody to help me have this discussion. Your child's sick, whatever.
Right. And my concern was, should there be something, you know, a massive snowstorm and while the kids are in school, any water main break and the street's broken in half, you can't get through. Things like that where, you know, you don't want to be limited to 30 minutes if you've got all these children.
Yeah, in cases like that, we'd probably use the Alert Now system and send it out that way instead of trying to individually call. That would use up a lot of time. So we'd probably try to figure out a way to use Alert Now so that we'd communicate with Spanish or homes where we know that English is not the first language and Spanish might be the language of Somali Bantu. I don't know, but yeah.
Thank you. Mr. McCray.
Thank you. Even though Mr. Eichler's out of town, somebody had to steal my thunder, right, Dr. Allen? Number 8, I just can't get enough of these kind of things. The edible gardening, I think last year I said it, let's expand it. Let's do it in all the schools. I can't stress the importance of knowing what things look like that grow, and this is a fantastic program. I think everybody should be doing it in every school, and every school should have a greenhouse, but never. Thank you.
Ms. Shealy.
Thank you, and I guess I'm just going to follow you all evening. On Edible Schoolyard, I think I got an email earlier this week from Grow Pittsburgh just talking about their programs, and I think there are at least 4 schools. Do we? Well, I can name the 4 that I know, but yeah, Dilworth, Faison, and Weil are the 4 that I'm sure of. There may be a 5th. But my question is, do we see these tabs separately because each school pays for it themselves, or is there a central
They do pay for it from their site-based funds. We approve the partnership that schools, if they want to go ahead and, some people choose other partnerships, but we approve it that it's a good partnership, and then schools, based on their interests, use Grow Pittsburgh, or they could be partnering with some other similar organization.
So we'll see each of the tabs could come 4 different or 7 different types, however many schools they are, but it's each school. Okay. Are we looking at, we pay the same rate for everybody?
I'm going to have to look into that with our assistant soups, because this is the first one I remember this year coming through. So we'll have to check on if Colfax and some of the other schools actually are doing annual renewals, or if they're maintaining their garden on their own.
Isn't there a Colfax PTO donation this month on that? It's not on that? Oh, sorry, maybe. Where is it?
It's in yellow. Sorry.
Okay.
Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. I just want to go back to item number 5. That's Richard Carrington, that he's going to be providing school-based prevention intervention services at Pittsburgh-Brashear High School for students who are identified by the student assistance team. He has a long track record at Carrick High School. The question is, how was Brashear selected as opposed to selecting any other school?
Brashear principals actually selected Richard because of the relationship. Dr. Murphy actually mentored Angel Washington, and Dr. Murphy also used to work with John Vodder, so they have a very close collegial partnership between the two schools. And when the principals reached out to Dr. Murphy, she strongly recommended Mr. Carrington.
Okay. Hopefully the word will spread throughout the district so that other principals have access or know of the services that are afforded to them. And I always would like to see wherever the biggest need is, that service is directed to the biggest need in terms of equity. But thank you very much. That's all I have at this section. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next section, payments authorized, numbers 17 through 22 in the blue. Dr. Allen.
No, thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Mr. Brentley.
Yes, for number 21, this, the after-school gifted program center, what school is it? Where is that?
This number 21?
Right.
The Gifted Center services our students across the district, all K through 8 students, and so this would be open to any school that takes advantage.
What school? What building?
Oh, this is Greenway, is where the Gifted Center is housed out of.
Greenway, wow.
West End.
Okay, this is not with, okay, I'm getting mixed up with our centers, the changes made to center. How many students will we be servicing?
We're going to have to check into how many students actually take advantage of this program. What this is, a little more detail I found out from Dr. French before I came up here, is that this is actually a service learning and charity program, that the Saturday program, students actually make bowls for the food bank, the Pittsburgh Food Bank. And I'm not sure how many students this will actually serve, if it's based on interest only or if it's based on some recruiting. So.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. There's a number at the bottom.
I'm sorry, there is 120.
Thank you.
Okay, I didn't see that. Okay. Thank you. That just sounds like a wonderful program. It just, especially for an after-school thing, and you seem like you would want every student to get exposure to that. Number 19, and this is the with the Male Initiative, the kicking off the event sponsored by the Male Initiative Committee with the early childhood, getting men involved as well as mothers involved. And I just wanted to take a moment. I know we do it every year. This is the same event. Who is this? Carol Brown Martin. Okay. Okay. This is the event that's usually held at Rises Day with Melvin Hubbardale. Okay. I just wanted to just say thank you to Melvin. I attended it, I think, for the last 2 years. And wonderful job. We were able to get the men out. And if I'm not mistaken, last year he had Pittsburgh Steelers running back, Shot Mendelhart, I think, played in the basketball thing with dads or something. And it was just cool seeing him hanging out with our students and with our fathers. But I want to suggest for the district, it would be wonderful. At that meeting, they had a time where the men were able to stand up and kind of give a little testimony on how important it was to be involved and so on. But there was a speaker there that I thought was good, and I don't know his name, and I know, Miss Martin, you would know his name, but he spoke, I just know he had an accent, and I know he was not from Pittsburgh, but he spoke about coming into this area, this region, and not knowing that these services were here and how it helped him. And I just think there may be an opportunity to get this guy as our face out front in terms of talking about just all of the extra things that we do and we offer in terms of reaching out to folks. I could see the young man's face. And so I have to talk to Malvin again, but it may be worth it. And if he's going to speak again, I would encourage all my colleagues to go and listen. We're not talking a long time, we're talking maybe 8, 10, 15 minutes, if that. But he just talked about all the wonderful things that we have and what we offer, and it really brings you back home in terms of how we some people take a lot of things for advantage or just take it for granted. And but he would be great, so I'll find his name. It'd be wonderful to get this guy somewhere up front. And that's pretty much all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fink. Mr. McCray.
Thank you. I want to point out number 17 and number 18. Number 17 is the CAS Expo. Great event every year. If you can make it, go there. Also, number 18 says this is the annual Walk Your Child to School Week. As many people as possible, I'd love to see them walk their children to school. It's great exercise. And don't forget the band, is it Sunday, 1 o'clock.
Just on number 17, well, yeah, first, thanks, I agree with you. Thanks to Duquesne for the donation of the space. That's wonderful. But how does this relate to, how do children who have GIEPs but are in the IB program get to a comparative experience? Comparable experience?
That's a really good question, and I would have to follow up unless Dr. Otua knows about MYP IB students participating in this. Would have to defer to Allison. She couldn't be here tonight, so we'll get you that answer by Friday.
Thank you. That's it. Thank
you. Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Mrs. Zid. A very quick question on item 21. That's the board authorization requested to make payment for an extended Saturday program for students that attend the Pittsburgh Gifted Center and Gifted Pilot Schools. And because of that, the question is, how long is the pilot supposed to take place?
I actually was asked that question earlier today, and I think that's a very good point, because this is year 3, I believe. Is that correct? Yeah, and at that point, I think, yeah, it's not really a pilot anymore. So we're going to have to, as I say, as we talk about some of the other educational delivery, I think we need to say it's a program, so rather than a pilot.
Which would lead to the second question, is how well did the pilot do?
We do have some data. I was talking to an individual earlier today about this in terms of the objectives of the pilot, and we can provide you some information on how close we came in terms of reaching the goals we had for the program.
Okay, maybe we could put that on an education committee agenda as a presentation in the future, or information items sent out to people. So either way, but just to know the results of that and to not have to call it a pilot if that's the case. Or would the board decide to make it permanent or not, you know? Okay, that's all I had on that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to general authorizations, number 23 through 30 on the yellow. Dr. Allen.
For item 23, I just want to thank the United Way Mentoring Partnership and the Youth Futures Commission in collaboration with our Offices of Student Services for the Be a Sixth Grade Mentor campaign and all the resources that are raised to make that happen. I think we received updates from Dr. Lane that we're close to the goal of 250 mentors for sixth graders, and working on the goal still for those that'll continue. But we know that mentoring makes, a huge difference in the lives of children. So to have, such a comprehensive initiative like this, we're very fortunate. For number 24, also excited that we're going to have the challenge program, and I think, is it all of the high schools? All of the Pittsburgh Public High Schools. And these are, I've also had the opportunity to work with this program, and these are business partners that they raise the funding for to provide the incentives for all of the Pittsburgh Public Schools. And there's an opportunity for students, regardless of their ability levels, to show leadership, so areas of most improved academically, best attendance, most community service, and best overall GPA. So it's exciting to see this expanding. Let's see. That's it. Thank you, Mrs. Azuda.
Yes, I just, a couple things I just want to point out, just on the same item, number 24. And I just want to point that on this item, of course, on the last area in which they're looking or judging our students is the best overall GPA. And I just want to remind our colleagues again that it is important, and we did make an attempt that I think that did not work well with what the overall goal is for this community, and that is excellence for all. And so when we lowered the standards with the Eisler 1.5, kind of takes us out of that. They're actually looking at increasing the standards. So I just want to point that out. The other thing I want to point out is number 30, and that is the official naming of the school presently known as the Academy at Westinghouse. It is not presently known at the Academy of Westinghouse. It is known as Westinghouse. I am concerned that there is an attempt to change the name. If it were to be presented to us, I will not be supporting the Academy at Westinghouse. It is and will always be Westinghouse. Secondly, from having a conversation with the community there in front of the school the day of the meeting, some of their concerns were that there is a school in this area that's known or the name of the Academy, and somehow they work with kids who have some issues. They thought it was a negative kind of tone, and they did not want that to be associated with the school. Secondly, the concern is a rush to naming. There is nothing that you can point to as any kind of success at this point, and to rush into name it quickly as if it is something new, they had concerns about that. And so their feelings to me, which I supported, was Westinghouse. If anything, Westinghouse 612. Also, and Dr. Lane, I briefly shared this with you, that if necessary, I will even make a motion or put something on the floor that we have to talk about and get a clear understanding of the role and responsibility of employees when chairing meetings. That particular meeting, was a problem. I attended. I was called. I was not headed that way, but I was called, and from a couple of folks there from the Westinghouse Alumni Association is saying that they were thrown out of the meeting. They went in to monitor the process of naming, and they were really, really upset. I met some of them. I think one or two of them were actually there on canes, graduated 40-something years ago and had to stand out or lean up against concrete to talk because they were asked to leave their building in their school, in their community. No employee has that right, doctor, to put somebody out of a public building. They can monitor, they can sit and watch, may not be able to participate. And so I just think, and if necessary, I will make a motion to clarify that in the very near future. Secondly, I have some other concerns that I want to share with you at a later date around that issue. So on behalf of this board member, I want to publicly apologize to those members of the Westinghouse Alumni Association for their treatment on the day that the meeting was set. I want to apologize particularly to the seniors there who had took a long time to get there, and then to be told that they weren't allowed in their building. And so we don't do that. And as I mentioned again, I will put something on the floor and to make it very, very clear what our role is, especially when you're coming in someone's community. We want community involvement, and we want people, especially adults, to buy into their community. And so we didn't do that there. It continues to me make a strain in the community, in that particular community. So we should find a way, once again, actively involved were all the a lot of members from the Westinghouse Alumni Association. So we have to find a way to reach out. We cannot continue to build this fence up with this particular organization when they're willing to help. So I will share with you my concerns at a later date before the meeting that I think what should happen. And so, and I hope you're open to it. So that's it for me. So I'm hoping my colleagues will join me as well with just keeping the name of Westinghouse. Also, if you look at the history over the last couple of years, we've always been quick to change names. And as one person whispered in my ear there, she said that we don't want the change in the name. We want the change on what's going on in the building. It is out of control. We need a lot of help. So that was a telling comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Bentley. A couple of clarifications I'd like to make. There is a process in board policy regarding naming of schools, and I know that the word was kind of in the community renaming, or implication that there was some effort to change the name. And the committee had the perfect right to say, we want to keep it just the way it is. I mean, there was no, that's part of, their purview. We got a cross-section of individuals, and I think there were about 15 or so people that were invited to attend a meeting, have that conversation, and then they would next provide a recommendation of 2 names to the board naming committee, and then the board makes this decision. It is not my decision, and I certainly had no interest in one name over the other. I feel that naming of schools is a community function, and that's who should do it. I understand that there were individuals that were told to attend the meeting and by members of the community. It was not a public meeting. It was letters were sent to a group of people to come to meet to discuss something. It was not meant to be a public meeting. There was not a public notice to attend this meeting. So there was some confusion, I believe, that resulted because of that. If anyone was treated with anything less than courtesy or consideration, I too apologize for that, because I don't agree with that either. So if they understood that they were going to be able to be a part of a meeting, got there and found out otherwise, that's unfortunate. And we certainly wouldn't want that to happen. As I understand it, the group that met did have 2 recommendations that they then would send forward to the board naming committee for consideration. And then the board naming committee actually would bring a recommendation for the school's name to the full board. And I really didn't see this as a rush. The school's been open since August, and this was just something that we needed to, get taken care of. But I agree with you that the more important thing is wanting to have a school that meets the needs of kids. Certainly a more important consideration than the name of the school. And certainly it's a greater concern of mine as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Fink?
As far as the word academy in the title of Westinghouse, I hadn't really thought about it until Mr. Bentley brought it up. But yeah, the academy, as it is known, is a school for children who have been adjudicated. And there's also the word academy in several private schools with very fine reputations. So that can go either way. But if we are looking at school names, and I truly believe that the community should be the one to finally choose that. If at some point we decided to drop the prefix Pittsburgh from all of our school names, sure wouldn't break my heart.
Mr. McCray.
Thank you. Okay. I just want to start out with the first one here, yeah, I'll be all right, the mentoring program, and mention that the city of Pittsburgh is offering their employees compensation, compensatory time in order to become mentors. I believe we have 60 people from the city. And unfortunately, my department, it's very difficult to get time off to do it. Let's see, we'll start with the thank yous now. Well, the challenge program, Dr. Allen already covered that. Thank you very much for that. The Pittsburgh Pirates, they did a special event of Clemente at the Faison. That was, I think it's just, it was, yeah, I wish I was there. Let's see. The PTO, oh no, sorry, Walmart is donating some money to Schaefer for gift cards. The Colfax PTO, I'll let you handle the Colfax since you have very little interest in that. And the Pittsburgh Roosevelt PTO, thank them again also for their generous donation. Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Shealy.
I think I'm meaning Mrs. Fischetti here, but the official name of the school known as Westinghouse is?
That's just it. We have to confirm a name, and this.
No, I mean, I'm sorry.
Oh, you mean
the former
before
yeah.
George Westinghouse High School? Well, Pittsburgh Westinghouse High School, I guess.
So that's in the. I think it goes to the PDE or whomever that goes
yeah,
to.
Yeah, it does go to the Pennsylvania Department of Education.
Which is one of the two choices that was presented to us.
I believe that is correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. I'd like to draw attention to item number 24. That's the partnership with the Challenge Program. And that's authorization requested to partner with the Challenge Program Incorporated. And this is a program that's designed to build a bridge between students in high school and the business community and to motivate students both in and out of the classroom by providing incentives to students for successes they achieve while in school. So kids are going to get paid to most improved academically, best attendance, most community service, and best overall GPA. And the question for best overall GPA is that the QPA. I see some head nods. When they say overall, reason why I ask that, because when you say GPA, it's the grade point average, which I understand is the last reporting average that you get from the last reporting period, although QPA is your cumulative grade average over time, so overall GPA would be the same as a QPA, I'm assuming.
Yeah, this has been an interesting conversation that we have had. And the idea of which is which, most people, I'll say, many people, I'm one of them, GPA is the cumulative. Yeah, because what you got in the last grading period is certainly interesting and important, but overall the most important thing is what the cum is. And so the QPA is something that, you know, this surfaced, at least for me, fairly recently. So I agree, it needs to be the cumulative grade point average because that's the one that matters for the promise. So, yeah. But when I say GPA, that's what I mean. But it sounds like not everyone thought that, so.
As long as it's understood for what student qualifies to get the money for this program, which one we're going to use for that. I was just asking that for clarity purposes.
So do we have the answer to that? Is it the cumulative GPA or the last 9 weeks?
90% certain that it's the QPA. Dr. Atua is shaking her head as well. Yes, it's the QPA.
Okay, thank you. And just to let you know, the recommendations have been put forth on the board tab for the last item that we have, which is the board authorization is requested to officially name the school presently known as. Presently known as is just a placeholder, but the official school is still, I would say, the original name, which is George Westinghouse High School. That happened in the University Preparatory School at Margaret Maline's situation, where it was known as UPrep, and then people call it UPrep. And then I saw a sign on the school that said University Preparatory at Pittsburgh Margaret Malines, which is the sign on the back entrance. So at some point in time, folks need to know the distinction between the official name and the commonly used name, and to not confuse the two. And then when you put it on a building, either commonly used or misconstrued, whatever you want to do with it. But I think at some point in time, we need to be consistent with the official names and whatever the commonly used names are. And it's interesting that one of the names that I had thought of was the Nelson Academy at Westinghouse, but nobody came up with that. But that's another issue. The naming committee will get together as soon as possible, and we will provide a recommendation to the full board of the two names that were presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just, number 29, and this is for Ms. Ripper, I guess. You know, and I brought this up before, and maybe we don't have anything to say so, but this gang-free schools, you know, if we have a say-so in changing its name or whatever, but what is the Pittsburgh Youth Intervention Project, which sounds like a much better name, and it says the city's using it. Is it city, or is that, or are we using it, or is it a separate fund? Separate program. I don't know.
Right, it's a combination of a variety of programs here, but what I wanted to point out to you is this money is used for the East End, and as you were talking about Mr. Carrington over in the South Hills, we have the YMCA who works with outreach workers that go into the schools in the East End through this funding.
And I guess that's good. I was questioning the title and the name, and I like the Pittsburgh Youth Intervention better than the referencing gang. Believe it or not, when young boys hear that, they will actually throw up their little signs in their hood, and I just think it's a minor issue. But every opportunity that we get to deflect that kind of activity, we should take advantage of it.
That is the name of the funding source. Okay. We don't refer to it that way, you know, when we're working through it, but that's the funding source. Okay. Calls it that.
Yeah, suggestion. We may, I mean, have we ever had a conversation with them as a suggestion, you know, to come up with, that's a great name for this youth intervention program. So, and then also, Doctor, the proposal for the name of Westinghouse, we are not required, or there is nothing that's tied to changing a name. It is not mandatory because of funding or deadline or timing that the name be changed at all.
No, there's no requirement that it be changed, but but we do need to, the board does need to confirm what the name is. So it could be the exact same name, that's fine. So, because of the status as a new school, the board policy says we have to you have to confirm what the name is.
Okay. Okay. Well, and I think when we, well, as I mentioned before, it's just it would be wonderful to consider name changing a year or 2 years down the road if there is some kind of success and some track record and so on. And the feelings, again, is that it is right now. Some feel that this thing will not end up to be the same a couple of years from now. It will not be what it is now. And so their concern is why flip-flop and change names. Besides that, they don't want anything attached to, which I agree, attached to or associated with the wonderful history of Westinghouse. I'm sure you've seen the Hall of Fame, or Wall of Fame. And I just think it's a wonderful suggestion. I just wish we could do it for each school, but you know what I mean? I wish we would have thought about that for my old high school, to show the contributions that some of our graduates have made. So that's their concern. Makes a lot of sense. So I just want to make sure that there is no gun against our head to change it. It's not tied to any money. There's no deadline. There's no rush. Got to do now. Close the school, especially, you don't, none of that madness. You don't have to do any of that. So, okay, I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Make sure I'm clear. There is nothing that compels the board to change the name. Nothing. Okay?
Okay.
But what I am saying is you do need to confirm a name. So you could say it's the exact same name. That's fine. So you do need to confirm a name because I don't know if there's necessarily an issue with the PD in terms of what we're going to call the school. We know clearly the academy, you have not named it that. There was no process around that. So you do need to confirm a name, but there is no need to make a change.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question for Dr. Atua. On this number 24, the challenge program, just for clarification, each of the students gets an award. Do they get one of those four, or do they each get an award in each site, one person selected out of these four? I didn't know how that tied in.
Christiane Ochoa, each of the students gets one of the awards, either the most improved, knowledgeable, dedication, or ETC.
Okay.
But they all get an award.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Just on the naming issue, we actually are under a deadline, aren't we? Doesn't the board's policy state that once the committee is formed, we have 30 days to actually act on that? Once the recommendations hit the board, the policy is that we have a month, I think, to act on it.
We can, you may be correct on that. Can anybody have an iPad can pull up the board policy and check? Please. No? Okay. Glad we purchased all this technology. Thank you.
I just wanted to make it clear, my concerns is not within the timeline or frame of our policy. I'm talking about even getting it and considering it as a name change. That's my concern, that it's not tied to any dollars. There's no deadline that we are forced to and we have to. I mean, I'm sure there's some kind of timeline. Yeah, but I'm saying that we don't. There's nothing requiring us.
Our own policy. We would be in violation. I believe we would be in violation of our own policy if we do not act within 30 days of their recommendation.
That's right. If we've initiated the process and we have, but my point is that I'm making that there was no obligations for us to even change the name. We're here, but there is no obligation. So just like we can make a move to slow the process or to extend it, we can do whatever we want. I'm saying we're not bound by any law or any funding to even consider a name change. It's just someone just thought about it, came up and moved and pushed it forward, but there is nothing saying that we're on a deadline. State doesn't require the funding, folks. We have dollars and it doesn't require any of that. And that's my point. I mean, I'm sure there's some kind of timeline within here, but we can control that process. There is no outside force forcing us to change it.
Okay, I do have, and this does confirm that the requirement is that the board take full action within 30 days from when the naming committee has brought forth a single name recommendation to the full board, and that's the board's naming committee. So the 30 days appears to be after your naming committee brings forth a recommendation, then there's 30 days. Yeah.
So with that, though, why is there a tab? Because that tab should have been initiated by us then.
Well, I think the tab is because there is a board naming committee that's been appointed. We have received the recommendations from the community naming committee. So the tab was probably entered in a belief that the board was anticipating action this month. But since your naming committee, your 30-day clock hasn't actually started yet, then, you know, you could yeah, you could wait, I assume. I don't see, that that's a big issue unless I don't think that we have any issues with PDE or anything like that I'm aware of.
Not
Yeah.
really. I mean, the
Okay.
school is, it's a new
Right.
school, but I mean, they don't care what you call it. They just want to know it's a new school. So I should say that if in fact his naming committee, the board naming committee is not going to complete its work by the legislative meeting, it may be advisable not to have this in here because there's nothing to do.
Certainly, it's easy to pull it. It's easier to pull it than to put it in. So I think that's probably why it's in.
That's fine.
Mhm.
Thank you, Dr. Lane.
Thank you. Moving on to the Committee on Business and Financing. There,
Business.
That's business and finance.
Section A, Dr. Allen. Mr. Brentley. I'm on the blue pages, Section A, numbers 1 through 4, and there are 2 different shades of blue.
Not at this time, if I have some, I'll come back.
Mrs. Fink.
Any shade of blue?
Any shade of blue.
Okay. On change order report 1147, just have a question. It's page 1 of 2 in the blue, the lighter blue. On the second item on that page is electrical work in the kitchen, and it talks about installing shunt trip breakers and associated equipment for the Ansel system.
Yeah.
Why would you put an Ansel system in an elementary school kitchen? Anybody tell me that? You have no open flame, you have no deep fryers. That's what an Ansel system is for.
I'll find out why we did that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, because if you think of where the convection ovens that we use for lunches are located in elementary schools around the system, I've never seen one with an Ansel system or anything close to it. And if we went to the expense of putting an Ansel system in a kitchen for a convection oven, there is something seriously wrong with the mind of the person that designed that.
I won't attest to that, but I'll get the answer on why we did an answer system.
I'd like to know because they're not cheap.
Clearly. Tell me about it. Every 6 months I get inspected.
Thank you. Mr. McCray?
I'm good.
Ms. Shealy?
Just general on change orders. The up to amounts that either Mr. Camarda or Dr. Ling can authorize are for each specific change. It's not for the project. Like if you add up the Concord changes, those amounts are significant and they might bump over somebody's authorization level. But each change has its own. Why do we do it that way? Because I guess my overall point, and I'm sorry how this may imply untrustworthiness, but is that you can nickel and dime $300,000 worth of changes and never come before the board.
That's the way it's set up.
Why is it set up that way?
It's set up that way because that's the way the policy reads right now. As you may remember, we stiffened the policy a little bit about a year ago because we wanted to also look at the percent of the contract that a change order was, not just the amount of the change order itself, because a change, my assertion at that time was a change order that's 50% of the contract is a big deal as compared to one that's 1% of a contract, even though the amounts, may be the opposite. So we did do that. Now, if you would like to look at change orders on a project, I think the issue we might get in, we certainly can do that, but because they're not always, like in this case, we've got Concord, there are 2 different contractors. We've got the electrical, and then the general prime. So that would have to be something that, would be considered as well. But certainly total changes on a contract, I think, would be a good place for the board to be advised as to where we are on a particular contract. Because I agree, we've had some that have had startlingly numerous changes. Thank you.
Mr. Sumter. Okay, moving on to Section B, consultants and contracted services. Those are the pink pages we have. Dr. Allen. Mr. Brentley. Mrs. Fink. Mr. McCray.
Just real quick, I want to clarify. On number B2, this is for the voice over IP. Didn't we just install that?
The initial installation was approximately 12 months ago. The software that runs the system is due for an upgrade.
Already?
Yes.
Will it work this time? And when the phones go out, that nobody will be without service like we've been having problems in the past?
The problems that we've had in this building were power-based and not the application-based. We are working with the facilities team to try to make sure we have redundant power sources, so the problem will not reoccur.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Ms. Shealy. Mr. Sumter. Okay, next we'll move on to general authorizations. There were none when we received our packets, but in the orange folder, we do have walk-ons. They are numbered C1 through C1. There you go. So, somebody want to talk to us about it?
I'll speak to this. As the board is aware, our work of both our facility department, of our financial department, as well as the academic team, has been ongoing in our effort to prepare for you a 2012 budget that addresses, to the extent we possibly can, our deficit. And we engaged the help of a consultant last spring in order to help us with this work. The plan was to extend that contract through getting us through budget adoption in December, and a little bit of work toward the budget execution process, which is equally hard, and it's going to be significantly hard this year. The firm we'd been working with, we're not going to be able to continue with for several reasons. So I talked to a number of people regarding someone who could help pick up the rest of this and help us get this to the finish line in a way we'd all like to see it. Received a recommendation, even though we did look at a couple of other potential firms. Received a recommendation around this firm, met with them. They came in within 48 hours, met with us, talked with us, and that's what this is about. So that's what this is for. The amount that is listed there, as you see, is the total contract amount. It is not, we do have some independent funding already listed to help with this, and I intend to procure additional funds to help support it. So I'll be bringing forward to you more information on what the district's actual information on my success in securing additional support for this. I know that in tough budget times the question might be, well, why would you want to go out and do this? And believe me, I would not if I didn't think it were totally necessary. And as I said, we've got a situation that is something that the district has not dealt with. At least anyone that I've talked with said that it's way beyond anything that the district has dealt with. So we believe that there are several good reasons for this. One, again, we think that people that have familiarity in school finance, this firm certainly does, can bring their experience to the table, which is strong. Furthermore, they help validate what work we have done and make sure that, we're providing you and the community with the best information we can. And also, there may be some things that they see that we don't, as I said, that we could consider in terms of ways to close our financial gap. So that's what this is about, and so I ask your full consideration of the matter. Thank you.
Dr. Allen.
I'd just like to note that the credentials of the principals working on this are quite impressive in terms of the scope of their experience with school districts and other large systems. I'm trying to pull out some in particular. One was the COO for Detroit Public Schools. Delivered over $53 million in savings and reduced the department's operating budget by 20%. Another person worked on the administration of Washington, D.C. Mayor Anthony Williams when he advised the mayor on matters related to budget and finance. Another person, this person also was the executive director for the Department of State and Federal Programs at Detroit Public Schools, overseeing reform activities and $556 million in state and federal programs. And there are other folks listed, but I am hopeful and trust your recommendation, Dr. Lane, that they're going to bring forward some innovative thinking for how we can still meet our goals of improving equity and the performance of students within the budget restraints that we have.
Thank you. Mr. Brentley?
Yeah, Doctor, I'm going to, I appreciate your recommendation, but I'm just wondering why you were never able to follow up on some of the suggestions I know I've made repeatedly about extending an invitation to PPS employees, former employees who have a ton of expertise and who would jump at the opportunity of being invited to an advisory capacity. This is a huge issue we're dealing with. I'm certain this company has a lot of experience, but we also need someone who can recommend and suggest with the delicate control of a surgeon's knife. How do you make adjustments, recommendations, and so on without cutting on the wonderful programs or without recommending anything or taking away from that? So I'm just asking again, why have we not extended to the retirees out there?
I know you've made that suggestion to me more than one time, Mr. Brentley. I think what I'll do is maybe you and I can talk about how you envision that. And as I thought about it myself, it's not that I am adverse to listening to those who may have some ideas or suggestions. But first of all, I don't know if you have particular individuals in mind. I don't, and if so, who they might be. And so maybe we can talk about that, because the other thing that I'm not totally familiar with all the retirees or how I would even contact them. So perhaps you and I can talk about a little more detail. I'd certainly be willing to hear your thoughts on that. So perhaps we can discuss that.
We can, but let me just briefly kind of a quick overview of it. Just I'm envisioning a simple call to action. We have access to mailing addresses of most, or if not all, of our retirees, and just say, here are our trying issues. Would you be a part of a one-day ad hoc committee to give suggestions, or would you be willing to send in your recommendations on how we can do this without cutting on kids? I mean, quite a few of them out there, and I'm almost certain if it's an open and honest invitation, they will respond. The district's been very good to some of them, and I know we can get them much cheaper than what we're getting ready to pay for here too. And even if we put a panel or committee together that would serve as an ad hoc or an advisory to this panel, I think would be helpful. Quite a few folks out there who who monitor, and I'm stunned to find out those individuals who do nothing more but watch these board meetings. You know, there are people who actually, what, yeah, I met one young lady who reads every transcript. Look, I'm honored, you know what I mean, that there's folks that are like that. And so I think if we say, hey, look, here's something we're dealing with, would you be willing to come? If we have just a one-day luncheon and we'll pay your transportation or whatever it is, or a stipend for your gas to come in, just tell us what you share it, let's, you can't go wrong. But not only that, but that would show a real sense of family here, because what we're facing is going to really, really hurt a lot of people if we don't get it right.
Mr. Brentley, I certainly will see if there's some way we can reach out to our retirees and let them know we're certainly open for their suggestions, but I wouldn't want anyone to think that their suggestions are the same as what I'm asking for here. One of the things that we're going to be able to do over time is we have to be in converting our costs into cost per student, which I believe will help all of the board members as they compare one thing versus another, because frankly, it is going to boil down to a matter of some pretty tough choices. And I wouldn't want anyone to think that this is going to be done in a way that we're all going to think that it wasn't very, very difficult and very painful just because of the sheer magnitude. And so certainly I'm open to any ideas or suggestions people have. However, I'll be honest in saying that even, I don't care if you're expert as these people who have done it in multiple school districts, or if you're someone that just has a deep knowledge of the district because you're a retiree from this district, adding all that together, still there are going to be some tough choices that that I'll be recommending to you all as directors.
Ms. Fink? Mr. McCray? Ms. Shealy?
So, you truly anticipate that this will be done by December 31st? Well, I understand for the 2012 budget that this has to be done by the end of this year, but just going forward, do you anticipate needing services such as these for future? Yeah.
I wouldn't want to totally say we wouldn't, and the reason I will say that is because we know we really have 2 budget years to deal with. It's not just 12, it's also 13. So as we work toward 13, as we work on 12, we're certainly thinking about the implications for 13, because it is not just a single year problem that we have. It is my certainly intention that we kind of have an eye toward 13 as we ask you to approve 12, but I'll probably know a little bit more within a couple of weeks, a better answer to your question.
Thank you. No more questions.
Mr. Sumter?
Thank you, Mrs. Azuda. No further questions or comments at this time.
This meeting's adjourned. Thank you all very much.